fantastic. So I think we're about to get going. Okay, cool. I think we're now live on the 11 Plus Facebook group too. Apologies for the slight delay. Something happened on my Facebook account, which didn't let me stream live, but I think we're up and running. So sorry for the few minutes delay in getting started. I think it's all worked. Let me know if it's not working. Sally, I've got my email open, or send me a message on. Okay, cool. I think it's all working. I've just opened the 11 Plus page and it's there. Okay, fantastic. Right, so what am I talking about today? First of all, it's a Saturday, so thank you for coming to learn about maths on a Saturday, for anyone who's interested. And what I'm going to talk about is maths on the 11 Plus. So again, it can be a slightly, I don't know, it can seem like there is a lot to do and a lot to learn in it. It can seem a little bit overwhelming. So hopefully I can help break that down a little bit. So what I'll do is I'm just getting my little cute presentation ready. And if you're watching along with your kids, there'll be some votes that they can do in the poll. And also take some notes for yourself on the key concepts, and I'll give you some tips on what you can do to help prepare. If you haven't seen me before, hey, I'm Jono from Atom Learning. I am, how long have I been working in education technology for like 2 years and tutored for about 8 years. So know a thing or two. And this was a requested video to go over math topics. So hopefully it will be useful, and I'll keep an eye on any questions in the Q&A. Great, okay, all good from Saba. Right, so let's get into it. Sorry for the slight technical difficulties. It worked fine last time. This is my second time doing a collab with the 11 Plus group, which is great. Thank you for having me back. So let's just dive straight into it. So what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to do a topic overview, go over some questions, and then we'll have a review. The idea of the questions is just to kind of give you an idea of the types of questions you can expect to see, or what your child will see on the exam. And also just, I'll go through kind of how I would tutor a child with it, and how to kind of break down some of the more difficult wordy questions. So I'm going to start with the topic review. Now, the topic review can seem like very overwhelming, but there are lots of topics, but they are pretty much for both like GL and CEM, they are based on the national curriculum. So they will have covered them in school. And I'd say a good place to start is to just print out or get it on your like computer or whatever, the national curriculum for Maths for Key Stage 2, and just work through it with your child, because that is what the maths questions will be based on. And most of the time on the national curriculum, they'll give you like example questions, which you can try and work through with your child as well. So that can be a really good starting point. And it's also beneficial for their school. It'll be different. I think SATs SATs are cancelled this year, but it's also good practice for that. But it's good just to make sure they have a good kind of grasp of the solid foundations of math before they move up into high school. So we'll go over a topic review, we'll do some questions, and then we will review the session. So let's get into it. So basically you can break down math topics on the 11 Plus into like 5 categories. So data, number, geometry, measurement, ratio, and proportion. I'll go through each of those in detail in terms of what they mean, but again, this maps quite nicely onto the Key Stage 2 national curriculum. And this is also how we organize all the topics on Atom. So to make sure that we cover everything, each of these topics has a subtopic and a specific like 150 questions related to it, to give you kind of like a full spectrum of questions you could expect to see. So that's how the topics are broken down. Again, there are a few like weirder questions that aren't necessarily national curriculum, which I will mention, but like it's chill. Like with practice, it's totally fine. And if you are just systematic and you work through all of the different topics in these, all of the different subtopics in these topics, most of the time you'll be fine. So let's go through it. We'll start with data. So data, again, statistics, graphs, probability. In my experience, probability is the one that causes the most difficulty, because conceptually it's the most, I don't know, even I don't like probability questions now, and it's a long time since I've had to do 11 Plus questions. But data representation, so bar graphs, pie charts, line graphs, a little bit on like extrapolating data or interpolating data. Those are the harder questions that you can expect to see. So like continuing a line graph along, or trying to like estimate the amount of degrees you would need on a pie chart, something like that. And then probability questions are fairly simple. It tends to be like and or questions, like what's the probability of doing something and something. And there might be some probability diagrams or something like that too. But again, just getting familiar with data is important. So just practicing those skills. How do you draw a graph? What does a line graph look like? If you have an X value, how do you get a Y value on a line graph? That's really important. So that's something to just practice. And getting each other to draw out graphs is just a really good way of getting them familiar with data and what you need to put on the different axes, how scales work, that kind of stuff. So that's a really good thing to practice. So next up, we have number questions. These are kind of like the fundamentals, right? So place value is all about like ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, and also then switching it up and going into decimals with the decimal points. Operations, bid mass comes up all the time. So brackets, indices, division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. Just make sure that foundation is super there, because again, that can cause so many silly mistakes, especially when if your child's practicing a lot of mental maths, that's great, but they often forget the basic rules of like the order in which you do operations in the exam, causes a lot of problems. So again, just reinforcing that. And then fractions and decimals, again, cause lots of trouble, particularly like adding fractions and rationalizing, well, not rationalizing the denominator, like getting the lowest common multiple of the denominator and then adding fractions. Again, something that students find difficult. So again, just practicing with fractions. And with decimals, again, that's another area where students make a lot of silly mistakes. So just practicing lots of decimals questions, and just kind of, the more you practice and the more you just kind of drill in the basics, the less silly mistakes they'll make when it comes down to it. So next up, we have geometry. So geometry is all about properties of shape, position, and direction. So triangles, quadrilaterals, those are your big ones that you need to worry about. And a few like angle rules are important to know. So angles on a straight line are 180, angles on a quadrilateral add up to 360, all that kind of stuff. A bit of position and direction questions, so stuff like translations, reflections, all that jazz. That can be that can also cause a bit of problems, but the geometry is quite good because it can also help with the non-verbal reasoning sections. So the stuff about rotations, translations, reflections, also really good and ties in with NVR. So they're good thing to do together, because when you like being able to learn what you study in maths and apply it to NVR will help that concept stick better for your children. So that's something I would recommend doing. Measurement, space, weights, and measures. Again, this is also on the national curriculum. So just making sure they know different units, how to swap from grams to kgs, milliliters to liters. I think baking is a great way of practicing this, and you get a nice little cake at the end of it. So that's a fun thing to do, well, especially when there's not a lot to do in lockdown, am I right? So practice doing some baking, and just make sure you make sure that there is a good command of exchanging between like grams, kilograms, milliliters, liters, centimeters, all that kind of stuff. Ratio and proportion, again, fractions and decimals, that you'll see that features both here and in the number topic. So really important thing, there's a lot of questions on it. And similar, getting your child to practice ratios, so like 1 to 3 with those cute little pizzas, there is a really good thing to do. So again, this ratio and proportion is quite similar to number. They kind of, again, so you can study those together if you want to be a bit faster. But what's really important is just encouraging your child. And everyone can be good at maths. I think maths is one of those subjects, right, that just has like a lot of people have a block with, and anyone can be good at maths. Some students just need to practice a little bit more, and that's okay. So just reinforcing that and giving lots of positive motivation and positive reinforcement, is otherwise it can just seem really daunting when you've got to do a bunch of math and you have no idea what to do. So building up that confidence with math is also really important. And then a tricky one, algebra. Now, algebra is a bit of like a controversial, isn't the right word, right? But algebra is only really covered at the end of year 6 in the majority of cases. So it's important that your child has a baseline understanding, but at most there'll be like 2 or 3, I don't know, it does depend on the test, but the majority of the test won't be algebra. There'll be a handful of algebra questions. So they become particularly important if you're going for quite a selective school, or a school that's quite difficult to get into. With those, you might need to make sure that there's a really good command of algebra, but at most it'll be a handful of marks. So maybe not the most important thing to worry about. Right, so I think that was my topic review done. What I thought I would do next is just run through some questions. So in order to do this, I think what I'll do is you can, if you just type in the Q&A, or just comment the answer, and I will talk through how to do it. What I'll do is I will move my face. and I'll give you a minute to start having a think about the question, then I'll start talking through it. So again, we'll walk through those topics in order. So we'll start with a question on data. So there's a pie chart showing the favorite sport of 30 of your friends. How many of your friends said netball was their favorite? So I'll give you a minute to have a think, and then I'll start talking through it. I'll get my pen ready. A few answers in the Q&A already from ES and Neha. Very good. So what I'll do, I always like going for like a nice lilac color. So we know that there are 30 students in total. So this whole pie chart will be 30 students. And we want to know how many said netball was their favorite sport. Now, if we have a look, netball was 20% of this whole pie. So this whole pie is 30 children. So to work out 20% of that, what we need to do, if we get our 30, we want to do 10. The way I do it, I just like to keep it, I like to keep things simple for myself. I work out 10% first, right? 10% of 30 is going to be 10% of 30 is going to be 3. So I know that 20% of 30 will be 6. I've just doubled it. Again, percentages can seem really scary, but I think 10% is quite an easy one to visualize. Because you just, especially with a number that ends in a 0, you just chop that 0 off, boom, easy, we love it. And then to get 20%, we just double it and get up to 6. One of the answers will always try and trick you out with something like the 20 or the 2 out of 3 for 20 out of 30 or something like that. So just watching out for red herring answers is really important as well. So well done everyone that got that question right. So 2 of you got that really quickly on the Q&A. So well done, that was excellent. And I think the rest, did everyone else get it too? Yes, well done. Lovely sentence from ES as well, explaining how he got his answer. Well done, Fee and Neha as well, getting the question right. Right, let's keep going. So that was an example of a data question. Another data question, I'm feeling generous. It is a Saturday after all. Again, just being familiar with how to interpret bar graphs is important. So what would be the total number of shoes shown in this graph? Quick little time to have a think, and then I will talk you how to do it. Loud motorbike outside my window. Apologies for that. Okay, so again, I can see a lot of us are getting this right. Well done. So what we need to do here to forget the total number of shoes shown is, if we have a look at what we need to do, we see the number of pairs is going to be on the y-axis over here. So again, just getting familiar with how we label and what we would call the axes is important. And always watch out for scale, because sometimes there'll be 2 questions both based on bar charts, but the scale might change, and a lot of children might still be using the old scale. So just always check the axes and check how much each square is worth. So here, 1 square is worth, so this square is worth like 5 pairs of shoes. So we want the total number of shoes shown in this graph. So what we need to do, we can see that we have 30 school shoes. If we look at trainers, we can see that we have 25. For boots, we've got 10, and then for wellies, we've got 5. So what do we need to do? We just need to add all those together. So 30 plus 25 is 55, add 10 is 65, and then add another 5 is 70, okay? So there's going to be 70 shoes in total. So again, what's important here is just being really comfortable and familiar with graphs, so just practicing a lot of it. And again, these are those 2-step questions, right? And they can cause a lot of problems as well. So just practicing those. A lot of the time when you're practicing like mental maths in school or whatever, it's just like 30 plus 25 plus 10 plus 5. What you need to do here is you first need to work out, okay, how do I actually answer this question? Then you need to do the operation after it. So that is how this works, how these questions work. So again, just practicing these like multi-step questions is really important, because it might be a different style of thinking that children are not used to from their schooling. So data questions, bar charts, pie charts are the main culprits. Line graphs as well feature. So those would be the three I'd spend most of the attention on. And again, practicing drawing these, or even like having a play in Excel and making some, is really good, just to get them familiar with data and manipulating data. And that will also come in useful later, not just for the 11 plus. So well done. Right, okay, so now this would be an example of a hard operation question. So have a go at doing this and tell me what the answer is, and then I will walk you through how to do it. Okay, so what's important here is making sure that, again, this just looks like a straight up operation question, but what this question will be testing is the knowledge of key foundation. One of the ones I like harp on a lot about in the live lessons I give with Atom is BIDMAS. So if anyone's been to my free lessons on Atom, you know all about BIDMAS, because I won't shut up about it. I love the pyramid, it's really cute. I love operations. It feels satisfying to get everything done. So with BIDMAS, we start with brackets. So whatever's in the brackets is what we do first. So 16 minus 6 squared divided by 2. Now, once we're in the brackets, we still don't work left to right. What we need to do here is use BIDMAS to help us. So I see I is on the top of the pyramid. So I know 6 squared is what I need to do first. I stands for indice. Indice is a power or an exponent. So I would do 6 squared first to give me 36. So I have 16 subtract 36 divided by 2. That's all in the brackets. Now, what I do next, I've got to subtract and I've got to divide. Which one do I need to do first? I'm glad you asked. What we need to do is we need to do that division first, because if we look at BIDMAS, division here is above subtraction. So 36 divided by 2 is going to be 18. So we need to do 16 subtract 18, which gives us -2. Okay. So not only is this a BIDMAS question, it's also a negative number question. Notorious negative numbers. They cause a lot of problems. So next up, we need to -2 plus 8. I can see a lot of us got this. Well done. That is going to be +6 as our answer. So well done, everyone who got that one right. And it was indeed 6. So well done. I saw Fee and Neha get that right in the chat. So well done to you. Right, next up. So this is another one that causes a lot of problems. These questions, super common. They come up, they're pretty much guaranteed to be one of them. And what we need to do here, I'll give you like a second to have a think. Let me know what you think the answer is. This one takes a bit longer to explain, so I'm going to start talking through it. Let's do a nice cyan color. That's cute. So what we need to do here, again, a child might just see like 46 times 134 and be like, absolutely not. I don't know how to do that. I don't want to do this question, and just move on. But actually, they've given us a really helpful hand with 6,030 divided by 134 equals 45. What this equation tells us is if we have 6,030 divided by 134, we get 45. That is the same as saying 45 multiplied by 134 equals 6,030. So this is why those foundations of like BIDMAS and operations are so important, so children can make that connection. They might even think, oh, to get rid of the divide by 134, I could multiply by 34. Now, what makes this question then easy is if we've got 45 times 134 is 6,030, we need to work out 46 times by 134. So all we need to do with that, if we have our 6,030, we just need to add 134 to it. 0 add 4 is 4, 3 add 3 is 6, 0 add 1 is 1, and then we just have our 6164 left over. And what we have there is, we have 46, 134. So 46 times 134 gives us 6164. So the answer is A. So again, with these questions, it's all about getting familiar with like setting up a plan of attack. So you're starting out with, okay, like what information have I been given and what do I need to do? I can change that first bit of the equation to give me 45 times by 134. I can then work out 46 times 134 by just adding another 134. We love it. Okay, so that's another operations question, and the answer was A, so well done. Right, again, I said these would cause problems. Fraction questions. I'll move my face so you can see all the answers. So with these, an eighth plus 3/4, just honestly, just getting like worksheets of fractions or just like doing like setting like lots of fraction practice questions is a really important way of just like locking in this knowledge. So doing like, yeah, see how it's also about like adapting to the strengths and weaknesses of the child that you're preparing. If they struggle with fractions a lot, do them a bit more. If not, pick a different topic. And what's good, if you want to use something like ASM, the algorithm will adapt to your child and show them the questions that they most need to see. So if you want to take a load off and have a cup of tea, let ASM's algorithm do the work for you. Okay, let's talk through how to do this question. I can already see some right answers in the Q&A, so well done, everyone. So if we want to do 1/8 plus 3/4, what do we need to do? Well, 1/8 and 1/3 and 3/4, we can't add those as they are. When we're adding fractions, what do we need to do? We need to make that bottom number the same. So 1/8, I'm going to leave that as it is, but I'm going to change 3/4 into something over 8. Now, to get from 4 to 8, I have to multiply it by 2. That means I have to do the exact same for 3. I need to multiply it by 2 to give me 3 over. What am I talking about? Sometimes even the best of us make math mistakes. So 3 times 2 is 6, not 3. Good one, Jono. Next, so we then just need to add those together. So that 6 looks horrible. I'm going to just redraw that because we deserve better than that on a Saturday. So 1/8 plus 6/8. Now again, with fractions, we only add the top numbers, the numerator, so we'll get 7/8 as our final answer. Bam. So well done everyone who put A in the Q&A and all commented it. Really, really good. Again, just needs practice. So if you got a little bit lost in that, just review your fractions, maybe watch some of our YouTube videos on fractions, they're all free, and just ask whoever looks after you to give you some fraction questions to practice. Okay, now we have questions like this, which just look terrifying. So what this does is this is testing division as well as decimal placement and short division method. So short division and long division are two things that are pretty much guaranteed to come up and need to have like a really solid base in. So the bus stop method is the most common one that's taught in schools and is the one that we'll use here. It's called a bus stop method because apparently when you're dividing it, it looks a bit like a bus stop. I'm suspicious. I don't think it looks much like a bus stop, but I haven't taken a bus in a while because of COVID. So maybe I'm just out of sorts. So with this one, what we need to do, I think the decimal point here could be a point of contention for some students. They'd be like, no, thanks, I'm good. I don't want to do this. But again, it's just applying the same principle. I sometimes tell students just to forget about the decimal point and pretend that it's like 5,526 because they can see that and be like, yeah, that's a bit harder, but I can do that. That decimal point can just throw a few people off. So let's not worry about that. What we do here, we have our divisor and our dividend. Those are the fancy ways of saying the number and the number we're dividing them into. What we have to do, we try and do 9 into 5. 5 is in the tens column. 9 doesn't go into 5. You don't need me to tell you that. We then carry that 5, so we do 9 into 55. 55 is featuring a lot in this lesson. I don't know if that was intentional or not. It is one of my favorite numbers though. So 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, 54. So that goes in 6 times. So 9 goes into 55 6 times. Now, what I encourage students to do at this point is to eliminate answer choices. So I know that 9 goes into 55 6 times and there's a remainder of 1. So when there's a remainder of 1, we carry that to the next place value column. So I'm going to put my cute little 1 there. So it'll be the next step will be 9 into 12. But I know that the first part of my answer is going to be 6. So I can get rid of answer option A because that says 61. So again, that can help. With this question, it doesn't help too much, but literally sometimes at this point, you could probably get the answer because one of the answers might start with 6, one with a 7, one with a 5, one with a 4. So again, this is more of an exam technique thing to practice because that's the other kind of side of the coin, right? As well as learning all the math topics, it's about applying them to exam situations. So eliminating answer choices is a really important one. So let's go. Now we have to do 9 into 12. So 9 into 12 goes once. Now, because we've jumped over into decimals and we've got that cute little decimal point, right? We have to put our decimal point in our answer. The fancy word for answer is quotient. So the thing on the top here is our quotient. 9 into 12 goes once, remainder 3. So we carry that remainder 3 onto the hundredths column. And then we do 9 into 36. 9, 18, 27, 36. That's 4 times. So we know our answer is B, 6.14. So again, it's just taking that the basics of division, applying them to a new scenario where we have a decimal point. And one of the answers will always be the right answer with the wrong decimal point because sometimes examiners are mean and sometimes people who write questions are mean. I include myself in that because I've written thousands of these questions by this point. So I know what we do to try and trick out students. So that answer would be 6.14. Cool. Right, now this is wordy questions. I wanted to go over one of these because these can cause a lot of trouble, and that should say centimeters, not meters. So again, this is a multi-step question. And students just need to be like super familiar with being able to calculate area and volume stuff. Like basic calculations, we love it, but we need to make sure they're like, they know that area is like length times width and volume is width, length times depth. Okay, and once they know those basics, they then can apply them to these more like tricky situations where we have like a little question stem and all kinds of stuff that we need to work out. So what I'll do is I'll start talking through how we do this question. So we know that the volume is going to be 5625. So we've got 5,625 centimeters cubed. That is our final volume. We know that the formula for volume is going to be width times length times depth. We could switch that around. You could have it in any order because when you times things together, it could be length times depth times width, or whatever you want. So we've got 5625 centimeters. We know that our depth is going to be 30. So I'll have that at the end. We know that our length is going to be 15. What we don't know is the width. So width times 15 times 30 equals 5625 centimeters cubed. So we have two things we could do now. So 5625 equals width times 15 times by 30. Now, at this point, what you can do, it really depends on the confidence level of your child's maths. What we can do is we could do 15 times by 30 and then do 5,625 divided by 15 times 30. That would give us the width. Even as I say that out loud, I don't really want to do that. That seems like a bit of work, right? What I tend to do is this is more of an exam technique thing. I encourage students to use the answer options to help them, okay? So if I was looking at the answer options, I'd be like, okay, so I know the width has got to be one of these. What I would do is I would pick one of the widths that was in the middle of these values. So maybe like 12.5 or 15 and sub that in as the width. It's like a plug and chug technique is what some tutors call it. I think that's a horrible description. I don't like saying it. I just say substitute in an answer choice. So what we could do is we could sub in something like 12.5 and maybe being intentional with the one I'm choosing to plug in. But the important technique is to pick like a middle value, because if you pick a middle value, like answer option C, 15 centimeters, we then know if we need to sub in an answer above or below it. And it can be a bit quicker than trying to fiddle about with division, but really it depends on, a lot of students would like get to this point and then not know what to do. They wouldn't know how to work out W because that's algebra. But when you tell them, oh, just pick an answer and sub it in, they're like, oh my gosh, yes, we love it. We want to do that. So what we do then, if we subbed in 12.5, we would get the right answer of 5625. Now again, multiplication can cause some trouble. The most important technique for me is the box method. That's the one that students just love. So if we wanted to start out by doing our 30 times by 15, we have 30, and then we just put a 10 here next to the goldfish, cute, and then a 5, bloosh, bloosh, and then we multiply it across. So we do 30 times 10, which is 300. And then we do 30 times 5, which is 150. A tip I teach to students all the time is that when they're doing these multiplications, save the zeros for last because they can cause a bit of confusion. So if we want to do 30 times 5, I would tell them to do 3 times 5, which is 15, and then just add that 0 that was left. So that's just a fun little thing that helps a lot of the students I work with. And then you just need to add these together to get 450. And then if we wanted to do 450 times by 12.5, I won't do the whole thing, but we would do 400, and we would do our 50, and then we do our 10 and our 2 and our 0.5, and that's how we'd get there. Okay, so again, this is why practice is so important, starting with those fundamentals of like, okay, how do you do long division? How do you do box multiplication? How do you use BIDMAS? They become really important when you get to these harder questions, when you've got like tons of text, you've got to try and work out how big this massive fishbowl is going to be. Is it that massive? I don't know. We had fish once, but then we got bored of it and gave them away. So I don't really know how big a fishbowl is, but those foundations become even more important when you get to these harder questions, because if you struggle with multiplication, you won't even really know how to approach this question because you won't know how to do this last bit where you find out how to get to 5625. So once you're familiar with multiplication, it's easier for you to then play around and answer questions like this. So that was a little shape question. Let's move on to the next one. So we'll do what should we do next? I think I've got an algebra one. I'll do a hard fraction one. So again, this brings us to wordy questions, which cause a lot of trouble. Key things with wordy questions is taking it one step at a time, forming a plan, and just looking for the key parts of the question. Sometimes I get my students to read the question first. So how much does he earn? Because that way, when you're reading the question stem, you know what you're looking out for. And it can just make that, like, the process of deciding what you need to do that little bit easier. So let's have a go at working this out. So Andy is being paid £5.20 per week during the summer holidays for chores. He works for 2.5 weeks before giving up. How much does he earn? So again, multiplication and a fraction question. So practicing with mixed numbers and top heavy fractions can be important as well. So we start with our £5.20, and we need to multiply that by 2.5 because you know it's 2.5 weeks. Now at this point, again, that looks a bit gross. It's quite a hard calculation to do, but we can just rely on our nice little box method. So we would have our £5 here, we would have our 0.2 there, we would have our make a nice little grid so we don't get confused. Oh wow, what a good straight line I just drew. Then we would put our 2 here and our 0.5 here, and then again you just work across. So 5 times 2 is 10, 2 times 0.2 is 0.4, 5 times 0.5, that's 2.5. Should have picked a better color because you can't really see the bottom of the 2.5, but I promise it's there. And then 0.5 times 0.2 is just 0.1, okay? We're just timesing by 0.5 is just dividing by half. Then we just add up those rows, so that gives us £10.40. And then the bottom row gives us £2.60. And then we just need to add those together to get to our answer. And that's it. Not too bad. So again, just these questions hopefully just show how to build on those key kind of fundamentals of multiplication, division, box multiplication, fractions, integers, to then when we get to a question like this, which is testing, it tests decimals, it tests place value, it tests multiplication, it tests money. Those are all separate topics. So again, you need to encourage work or questions like interleave topics, because it's that like problem solving logic skills of like, okay, like what math do I need to use to get to this right answer? That's what the test is really looking for. That's what the test wants to kind of ascertain is, can your child work out the answer like without being told this is a fractions question? So another thing to do in your preparation is to make sure you're doing a mix of questions at once. Don't just do fractions and then teach your child about fractions. Teach your child about fractions, decimals, and multiplication, and then do a mix of questions on fractions, decimal, and multiplication. That interleaving of topics just gives you a more effective learning. So don't be like, have a rigid, like, we do fractions today and fractions questions tomorrow. No, do fractions today, decimals tomorrow, and then like shapes, and then do questions on fractions, decimals, and shapes all together, or mixed up in a nice little pot, because that will be more effective for learning. Okay, so I'm going to clear my drawings and then move on to a nice little algebra question. So again, algebra can seem like one of those really scary topics for primary school children, because it's normally sometimes only introduced right at the end of year 6, and sometimes it's something they haven't seen before by the time they sit they're 11 plus. But it's something that's quite important for competitive schools. So if you're going for like a very selective grammar school, practicing grammar can be practicing grammar is important, but in this context we're talking about practicing math. That's even more important. A few things that kind of help with this is just reminding students that x is just a number, right? X just equals any number. So if they have no idea what to do with this question, if they don't know how to simplify this fraction, I tell students to pick a value for X. I tell them to pick 2 normally. 1 doesn't always work with this rule, so 2 or 3 is a good one to start. And then I'd say, do you know what? Just pretend X is 2 and sub that into the answer. So if we did 18 times by 2 squared over 3 times 2, that would be 18 times by 4 over 6. Now I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. I'm just going to go over to the other side of the screen. So I have 18 times by 4 over 6. Now 18 times by 4, how good is my mental math going to be? 4 times 10 is 40. 8 times 4 is 32. So that gives us 72 on the top, divided by 6. 72 divided by 6 equals 12. So I know when x equals 2, this fraction equals 12. What I can do next is sub that same 2 into these answer options. So A, I can get rid of straight away because there's no x in it. B, 6 times x, so 6 times 2 equals 12. So again, that works because we're saying that this is the same as this. Because when x equals 2 and 18x squared over 3x, if we sub in x equals 2 into that and then x into B, we get 12 both times. Whereas if we go into C, 6 times 2 squared, that gives us 6 times 4, 6, 12, 18, 24, too much. Return to sender, we don't want it. That answer doesn't live here anymore. And then you can even do it on the last one. If we know 6 squared is 24, minus 2 gives us 22. There you go, there you have it. So I know the answer has to be B because when x equals 2, 18x squared over 3x and 6x both give us the answer of 12. So that's quite a good exam tip if you get a question with algebra and you need to kind of work out the answer. Substitute in a value for x and then substitute it into the answer choices. If we wanted to do it the algebraic way, we know that 18 divided by 3 is 6. X squared divided by x is just x. So x squared over x equals x. Again, we can show that with numbers. If we have 4 over 2, we get 2. So if x is 2, 4 squared over 2 equals, 4 over 2, which is 2 squared over 2, just gives us 2. So that is another rule. So that was my tip for algebra. Again, a good thing to practice because it can be a bit of a difficult one for some students. Okay, cool. So that's tip with algebra, plugging in the numbers and practicing kind of the fundamental rules of algebra as well. They'll never be too tricky. This is quite a hard one to include, but I wanted to stretch and challenge and provide a variety of content. I always get students saying like, that wasn't hard enough, or that was too hard. So hopefully it was a good mix of questions. So yeah, that brings us to the end of the lesson. So I guess I'll summarize quickly. I guess any questions, let me know. I'll just keep this slide up. But basically, the key thing is to make sure those fundamentals are there. So starting with stuff don't be afraid to cover stuff that they would have done in like year 3 or year 4. That was a long time ago. So make sure that they are confident in the basics. So when they get to these more difficult questions, like that cute little one with the fishbowl, that one requires shape knowledge, it requires multiplication knowledge, it requires place value knowledge, all of that stuff. So learning those foundations and then applying them to questions like this is really what's going to accelerate your child's learning, and just making sure you're mixing up the topics and not just doing like fractions one week, decimals the next week, whatever. Mix it up, do fractions one week, shape the next week, and then give them some work on both fractions and shapes. Just space topics, interleave topics, and try and review like if you introduce fractions on Monday, go over them on Thursday. You know what I mean? That's like the key bit of the forgetting curve when like you need to recover information. So if you're covering a study schedule, if you're trying to make a study schedule to cover all these topics, introduce a topic on like Monday and then go over it on like Wednesday or Thursday. That's kind of the key dip in the forgetting curve when if they go over a topic, it's going to be even more likely it will stick and last in their memory longer. So that can be helpful when they are revising a little bit closer to the date. Okay, so that is it for me. I hope this was a useful run through of topics. Again, if you have any questions for me, you can email me at classes@atomlearning. And if you want to sign up, there is a 20% discount code, which will give you 20% of any of the Atom learning packages. Again, all of these topics are covered by Atom. We've worked with teachers and tutors to cover all the potential 11+ questions that could come up. If you want some free content, you can check out our YouTube or on TikTok where I put on study videos. So thank you very much for joining. I'm sorry for the slightly late start, but I've had a lovely time and I hope you have a lovely weekend, everyone. And yeah, see you soon. Let me know any questions. I'll have a little look on the group afterwards. But thank you very much for coming and see you soon. Bye.